Okay, it's time to start sanding this fuselage and wing root section. I'm going to sand all the way up to the point where the wing, the leading edge of the wing becomes perfectly straight, that I was doing on the wire cuts before. And I'm going to stick it on the side of the bench here. It's not clamped down there at the moment, it's just sort of sitting in there, but I'm going to clamp down that piece of wood on the spars, and hopefully that will give me a nice solid foundation to work on when I'm sanding. In the last two builds, what I did was, for the first build, I just took the half of the plane fuselage here, so just these 3 slices, and I put the middle slice of it sort of flat down on the bench, and that worked fairly well. But then when you come to sand the other side, you kind of want to have them together to see that you're getting everything symmetrical. So then the bottom piece is not going to be flat anymore, it's going to be sort of rocking around on the bench, which was kind of annoying. And for the second plane, the flying wing one, for that one the fuselage was a lot wider, so I didn't have too much trouble with that. I just sat the fuselage flat down, like right side up, like it is here, on the bench. And because it was wide, it didn't sort of rock too much, and I was able to get through that without too much annoyance. But I thought I might try something new here, so we'll see how this goes with the clamping method. The other thing I like about this is that the fuselage itself is hopefully going to stay in exactly the same spot as I work on it, which means that I'll be able to put the camera up on a tripod and point it here, and the fuselage will remain in your field of view in the same spot, so you'll sort of hopefully see it being whittled away as I work on it through the time-lapse. Oh, these lines marked on here, by the way, to let me know as I'm sanding how far I can go before the next slice will be impinged on. Okay, that's just on 1 hour gone now, and I think I'm going to stop the time lapse here. I don't really like doing these time lapses too much. It sort of makes me feel like I'm under pressure or something. I know it's kind of silly because I could just stop at any time I like. But anyway, I need a cup of coffee too. So I'm probably somewhere between a quarter and a third done now, because I did some of the underside as well here, but not all of it. And this piece here needs quite a bit of work under there still, but it's hard to do it from this angle, so I'll do it after I've flipped it over, and this part will be on the top. But yeah, you could see, hopefully, from the time lapse that it goes pretty quickly. Okay, I did another half an hour on this, and I'm now finished all of this first side, at least the first pass. So that'll be 3 hours in total for both sides to do the first pass, and then probably about 20 minutes or so to do the second pass with the finer sandpaper once everything's evened up. So I'm going to stop here for now because I'm losing daylight, and it's not a particularly easy thing to do in artificial light, especially the crappy light in my garage. I was a little bit worried about this tail here, but it's worked out okay. I need to keep a 5 centimeter circle, 5 centimeter diameter circle there to put the motor on. Well, I'm going to put a motor mount on here. Whether I actually put a motor on here, I don't know, but I'm going to leave myself the option. Most of the half an hour that I've just done was actually spent in this area trying to dig into there a little bit without actually digging into the wing itself. But overall, it's turning out fairly well. From this point here, if we look down, so this is the center of the fuselage here, and we're trying to build a half circle around that on this side, around there like that. Seems to be going alright, but that's going to do it for now. I'll come back and finish this tomorrow when the sun comes up again. Yeah, and you can see I've left the blue lines quite visible here. Another reason to do that is because when I do the other side, I might go a little bit too far in one point, and to even it up, I'm going to want to come back and take some more off this side. And it's very easy to take some off, not so easy to put it on. I could use the microspheres to, fill in gaps and stuff, but that's a real pain in the ass, so you want to try and avoid that if you can. Anyway, to be continued tomorrow. Okay, I have the other half of the fuselage sanded now, and it took me about 2 hours to do that, so that's half an hour longer than the first side, but I think that's because I'm sort of fussing over trying to match the second side with the first side, whereas when you're doing the first side you have nothing to worry about in that respect. So anyway, 3.5 hours total sanding so far, but it's kind of enjoyable. Anyway, so I've been looking at this and I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about a couple of things. One is that the nose of the fuselage, the front part that sticks forward from the wing, just seems too big. It doesn't really need to be that big and bulbous. So I'm thinking I'll leave it as is, sideways like this, and I'll just sort of sand quite aggressively on the top and the bottom, because I've also figured out where I'm going to put my plate here to mount the battery on, and there's going to be quite a bit of room under the plate, because the plate, I want to keep the plate straight, but the bottom of the fuselage is curved, and yeah, you sort of end up with a bit of chunky wasted space there, so I'm going to try and sand that off. The other thing, or probably a little bit more important, is that the wing, it just looks too long and thin and slender. It would probably fly okay, I think it'd be alright, but you'd have to keep the plane very, very light, and judging from past experience, the weight just sort of seems to creep inexorably up and up all the time. So what I'm actually going to do is make a different wing. It'll be very, very similar to this though, of course, because I have to mount it on this point here. So what I was planning to do originally was make it so that the fuselage stopped here, and then these three curved slices would be part of the wing that gets detached, and that's the same way as the original Skyhunter plane did. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take all of this hot wire cut part. Well, I mean, it's all hot wire cut to some degree, but I mean the parts that I cut as 10 slices at a time like this, and I'm going to do those again so that this piece here at the end is not quite so, the cord is not so small. So it's only 12 centimeters here, which is pretty small. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it so that this piece here, this is where the kink comes in originally. This is about 14.5 centimeters, and I'm going to make this the cord there, so an extra 2.5 centimeters there, and it's just going to go in a straight line between there, and these pieces here are going to be permanently glued to the fuselage, and I'm going to detach it there. And these slices that I've made already here, I might come back to that in the future if it looks like the plane will fly okay with a slender wing like that, although really I don't see any reason to come back to it. So possibly what I might actually do is use these wing pieces that I have here already as experiments for my fiberglassing practice and stuff like that. So I don't want to cut 20 of these slices at once. I want to keep it to 10 at a time. So I've had to make another template for the middle section, which is going to be this one. So at that point it's going to be that big. So we're just adding about a couple of centimeters here and about 2.5 centimeters extra there. I also made a couple of templates to cut a nice airfoil for the tail this time, because the first plane that I made, the Skyhunter one with the foam board tail, that was kind of a crap one. That, oh, he's right there. Do you think he heard me? No, he's probably asleep. Yeah, but I want to get a little bit more fancy this time and see if I can make a nice airfoil shape for the tail. It's a bit hard to show you here, but this second set of wings turned out practically flawless. Apparently if you do something over and over and over, you get better at it, eh? Barely needed a slight dusting of sandpaper on the top to get that ridge in the middle off, and that was it. I'm just organising how much I'm going to cut away from the middle two slices here by laying out this paper plan on here, and I'm just going to draw with pen around the inside of that to know where to cut. Now the most important thing with this is that you leave yourself enough of this so that you can stick the next layer on. So this is layer 2, and the way that I usually do this is I copy the outline of this sheet onto here, and then I draw like a couple of centimeters inside that, and that's what's given me this line here. Now in this particular case though, I've deviated a little bit from the plan, so if I just see if I can show you what I mean here, the line there was what the original plan was, and you can see I've sanded that quite aggressively along the top here, but it's still giving me a good couple of centimeters of width there, and especially important for the top part here, because this is going to be my hatch to open it up and, you know, get my hands in there and do stuff. So that's going to go from here to here, and it's going to be a little bit thin, but I'm thinking about putting fiberglass all over the entire fuselage, because I'm going to have it here in order to make that tail strong enough so that it doesn't just break off when it lands. So this is all going to be wrapped in glass, and I'm thinking I might as well just continue the whole way along and just glass the whole thing. Previously what I've done is just a little bit of glass around the motor mount and the nose here where you take a hit when you're landing. But if I do put glass all the way down, one thing that lets me do is cut away much more foam from the inside here than I would normally be able to. So that's what I'm going to try with this one, and hopefully that will keep it light. Well, you have to cut away more foam to counteract the extra weight of the glass and the epoxy that you're putting on anyway. So this little bit under here is looking a little bit thin, but I think it'll be okay. Now this just here is what I was saying about the, I haven't done any sanding here yet, but because I want this piece to be straight, perfectly straight for a good ways along there, so that I can put a plywood battery mounting plate and flight controller mounting plate on there, it leaves me with quite a space under here that's just sort of wasted. So what I'm going to do now, after I've cut this, or after I've penciled it in, is I'm just going to quite heavily sand the bottom here as well, so take away most of that part, I think. The piece that I just cut out of the middle of the two center sections can be used to mark along here where you need to glue, because I've made this mistake actually quite a few times, in that when I come to glue these together, what I did was I just smeared glue all over here, but there's no point to that because it's only these bits here that are actually going to stick to this, because most of the middle of this, there's nothing there. I changed that combined battery tray and flight controller tray to two separate pieces like this, just to keep the weight down a little bit, and also because I remembered that it's a real pain in the ass to get your hand into this kind of a plane. With the flying wing it was alright, because I was making the hatch on the top was 4 slices wide, so you could get your whole hand in there. But if it's only 2 slices wide, you don't want to be reaching right down to the bottom of the plane to get at the flight controller. So I'm going to put this up on a tray that's about halfway up. So I've got this little template just to mark on the slice 2s on each side where it's going to go, because I want to gouge out a lot of material here, but I want to leave a little shelf for that to sit on. The other thing about this is that I could fit it on this little piece of 2mm plywood I have here instead of using the 4mm plywood. So I'm just sort of, overall trying to keep the weight a little bit lighter.